Welcome back to More Than a Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-Leagues and more. Today on the show, the Reds make it look like FIFA, while it might be game over for Newcastle. The Mac Bulls round up Sydney on their own paddock. The Melbourne Victory Circus is well and truly over, and we're treated to a Mars bar and a chip at Hindmarsh. And speaking of hot potatoes, the Yellow Wiggles cop 3 from Team USA. I'm Colby, and joining me today on the pod are Damo and Jesse. Boys, how are we on this Sunday evening?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm following Jesse's lead. I've got a beer in hand and ready to chat about some weekend of football.
Good week, Colby. Good week. Liverpool won, Sporting won, and the Knicks won. So I can't ask for more than that.
What a week. What a moment. And what a big pod we've got today. So much football to cover. We're heading into this time of the year where we've got A-League in full swing. We've got the Premier League in full swing, and we've got the Champions League heating up. We'll try and cover as much of it for you as we can today, listeners, but we're going to have to do it efficiently. So let's get into it. Damo, let's kick off with your moment of the week.
Boys, my moment of the week, we'll throw back to Mourinho, a favourite of the pod. He, not sure if you guys saw this, but there was a young player in his side, Felix Afena-Gyan, who Mourinho promised to him that when he made his debut, he would buy him his favourite pair of shoes, which was this ridiculous Balenciaga kind of slipper-looking shoe, and they cost about $1,800 or something, but the guy came on, made his debut, and Mourinho presented him with his pair of Balenciagas the next day. So it was you love to see it.
Jose's Insta's pretty lit, isn't it?
I love Jose on Instagram. I just wonder if he bought a pair of the Balenciagas for himself. Jose be dripping on his own Instagram.
I think he'd just be the biggest character to have around, wouldn't he? Like seeing him on the Tottenham documentary and just like what we see from his Insta and his press conferences and stuff like that. What a character of the game, and one of those ones that we're not going to really fully appreciate until he's no longer in the game. Sort of like an Arsene Wenger, sort of, once he goes out of the managerial circuit, we'll miss him.
I think a quote I read off the back of this shoe presentation was, growing up is realizing that Jose Mourinho has always been better than Pep Guardiola.
Ooh.
So on that note.
Well, on that note, Jesse, what have you got to follow that up with?
My moment of the week appeared relatively late. It was Diogo Jota leaving a FIFA tournament early to play for Liverpool. I'm sure I shared it with the group chat earlier, but if the listeners weren't aware, he was in the middle of a FIFA tournament and he messaged the guy and said, "Sorry, I got to go. I'm playing for Liverpool." I thought that was just absolutely fantastic. And his celebration after the first goal was him on his backside playing PlayStation. So you love to see it, don't you?
I love that he hit the FIFA celebration as well. It was brilliant. Just waiting for an update to FIFA EA Sports. If you could just build that celebration in, that'd be great.
It'll be done for sure. And then the other thing I was going to mention, guys, is just that hefty goal for Young Boys versus Atalanta. He absolutely slammed it with his wrong foot. And I know we'll talk about it a little bit later on, but that was an absolute screamer.
Yeah, plenty of good goals this week, and there's almost too many to choose from. So much football. We'll try and leave our mics plugged in tonight, unlike the Paramount Plus in the Western Sydney Newcastle game that's just finished, actually 2-2. What a cracking game that was. That we've had to just start our pod a little bit earlier because we're nothing if not sticklers to a loose schedule. But boys, my moment of the week. It's just the McBulls. They allowed their members to go free in the Sydney game. I just thought it was good areas. I think it was a bit of an olive branch to the fans after the fuck up with the pitch this season. So, but I just, it's something that they probably didn't have to do. They could have just apologized and got on with it. But it was good to see them doing that because they had to work with Sydney to make sure that, because it was a Sydney home game, they had to make sure it could all happen from their perspective as well. So, good on the McBulls for that.
I mean, yeah, it's great. But realistically, how many people are traveling from Campbelltown to Jubilee Oval on a Saturday afternoon?
Cowbells out there. Couple. And Damo, own goal. What stood out to you in the wrong way this week?
Own goal has to be Sheffield United. I spoke about this in the group chat earlier in the week. I'm sure you guys read my frustration. They've just let a second manager in the space of 12 months walk away from the club due to a dispute with the owner. Slavica Jovanovic is again claiming that the club had little to no ambition, and the owner really wanted to play football manager with players and signings rather than consult the football department. So, yeah, not great. This is the owner that's recently taken full control of the club within the last 18 months and got rid of Chris Wilder, forced Chris Wilder out the door, and then the next manager, and it's not looking very good at the Blades.
Where are they sitting on the table now, Damo? How's the season going?
Mid table, I think 12th. Could change a bit tonight with a few more games. I think they are 6-7 points off playoff spots, about 9 points off the relegation spot. So you could say bang average club in the championship this year.
Gee. So it's looking like we might have to wait more, at least another season or so to see them back in the Prem.
Maybe I might wait another 15 years like last time.
Bloody hell. Jesse, own goal for you this week?
Well, boys, I think it was covered briefly in our chat earlier as well, but the Portuguese League, we're going to the Portuguese League, and the game that happened overnight with Belenenses versus Benfica, what an absolute, it was an absolute farce, basically. For those that weren't aware, it did make a few headlines overnight, but for those that weren't aware, the game proceeded even though Belenenses, their home side, had 17 players out with COVID. So they started with 9 players. And as the game actually was abandoned early in the second half because the home side had just 6 players left on the pitch. They played the first half with 9 men, including 2 goalkeepers. And so Benfica was actually up 7-0 at halftime, averaged 85% possession. And so actually before the game, I thought this was after the game, but I was reading that this was actually before the game. The home side actually released a joint statement before the match that translated as football only has heart if it's competitive. It only has heart if it's really sporting, and football only has heart when there's an example of public health. And today football lost its heart. So it's had a big, it's been a bit of a bonfire in the media in Portugal over there, and a lot of other clubs, including Sporting and others, have actually come out and condemned it. And the Portuguese league's absolutely under the pump at this stage. So it's a really interesting case of sportsmanship, and it actually, it's easy to also put the dig into the opposing team like Benfica in this instance and criticize them for absolutely pumping them 7-0. But you have to also argue, like, why were they also put in this position in the first place? Because they have to collect points to win a league.
You can only play what's in front of you, and at the end of the season, it could come down to goal difference between some of those big clubs in Portugal. So Benfica will go out there and put as many goals past them as they could. I got nothing against Benfica. It's the organising body that's allowed a game to go ahead like this.
Exactly.
Quite rightly, like you said, Jesse, you're under a lot of fire. So more to come from that.
Absolutely.
Just reminds me of managing a futsal team in Melbourne when your mates were they might have had a big long weekend, or the weather might have been particularly great on that Monday afternoon. They might have wanted to go to the pub, and you were stuck having to call in ring-ins, and then you might have got a few dodgy ones. You kick off with 4 people. You're waiting on a friend of a friend who's stuck in traffic, and you just get absolutely pounded by the opposition. And I've found myself wishing that a few of those games could have got called off early too. So
yeah, if you think about it, it's exactly the same.
It's very close. It's very close. Boys, I've got a couple of own goals this week. My first one goes to the African journalist who got stuck into Klopp over some comments he made about the African Cup of Nations. Not sure whether you saw this, but for any listeners who didn't see this one during the week, Klopp was at a presser just being asked about the international breaks, and there was a journo sort of inferring the breaks weren't going to be sort of as hard on Liverpool this season as what Klopp had been complaining about, or has typically complained about. I think that was the vibe of it. And Klopp sort of responded saying, yeah, well, in January, there's this little tournament in Africa. that you might have heard of, sort of thing. And then in another interview, he got grilled by this African journalist, Ojora Babatunde, who took issue with Klopp's comment and just basically got stuck into him saying it was like really disrespectful to Africa and to the AFCON tournament. And Klopp was trying to explain, oh, look, that's not how I meant it. But he didn't do so very effectively because obviously English is Klopp's second language. And he was put on the defensive a little bit as well by the journalist, which didn't help him out. But he just needed to explain the idiom of, the little matter of something is sort of just purposely under exaggerating something, which is clearly a big deal. But it was just like the reaction from people on Twitter and this guy, come on, mate, like, what are you doing?
Has this guy been on Twitter before? I mean, he would last 5 minutes.
He kept posting it on Twitter as well. It was like he was posting clips from it and like geeing people up about it. This journalist, it's like, it was just wild.
He's the guy that the joke goes, the sarcasm is not. He doesn't do sarcasm. This guy. So,
but it was like clearly meant like, oh, this is a big deal. Like, he clearly meant that the African Cup of Nations is a big deal because it's going to take out Salah. It's going to take out Mane. So I don't see how it couldn't have been interpreted that way. But anyway, Klopp could have been a bit more apologetic, and he was a bit defensive and a bit gruff as we normally come to expect from Klopp. So he didn't do himself any favors. But I mean, what an own goal by this bloke.
Yeah, Germans don't tolerate stupidity, so he was probably just absolutely ripping him to shreds.
Klopp was flabbergasted. He was absolutely flabbergasted. He was like, just couldn't believe that this guy was like hammering this point. And my second own goal for the week, boys, I'm gonna do a 2-in-1. Goes to the Brighton fans after their draw at Leeds. After many tipped Brighton to finish in a relegation battle this season, which I suppose could still happen, but as it is, they're up around the top half of the table and they're now sitting in 8th, above Man United and above their bitter rivals, Crystal Palace. But still, the Brighton fans booed them after getting a point to Leeds after the game. And Potter was interviewed after the game and was sort of just like, we're sitting in 8th in the Premier League. I think maybe the fans need a bit of a history lesson of this football club. So... Brighton fans, I didn't think I'd be sitting here on this podcast sticking up for Potter after he got rid of my boy Matty Ryan, but like the fans just, I don't know what their heads are gone.
It's like we always say, it's bad enough being booed by one set of fans, but by two sets of fans, it's just insult into injury. Hove Albion and Brighton
needs a bit of magic to get the fans back on his side, Potter.
Okay, obligatory 2 club and Harry Potter jokes out of the way. I think we can. We've got them out of the way for this pod. I think we can get on to some news and listener questions. We'll just start briefly just to touch on the FFA Cup. There was a bit of FFA Cup action midweek. Don't know, boys, whether you saw any of these. Sydney Olympic 2, Sydney FC 4. And Perth and Melbourne Victory. Melbourne Victory got up on penalties in their playoff game against Perth. Damo, what stood out to you in these games?
I think the Olympic game was a great. The Olympic versus Sydney game was a great matchup. Unfortunately, as has been with a lot of the NPL versus A-League sides in the Cup recently over the last probably month and a half, 2 months, these NPL sides have barely even trained together for the better part of 2 years, let alone played competitive fixtures. And they're coming up against players that have been work exemptions during COVID and have been able to play and train. And, if you take all that into account, then Olympic made a really good show of themselves. And, they're a famous club in Australia and have a great history. And there was a lot of people turned out to the game on a very wet night in Sydney at Belmore, and it was a really good game to watch, really entertaining. Probably one of my favourite games of the FFA Cup so far this year.
Yeah, and it's been tough. It's been tough with COVID in terms of having the schedule all over the place. But I think, as you mentioned, Damo, it's always tough in the FFA Cup, and we still haven't quite found the right part of the year, the calendar year, I guess, to hold the FFA Cup, because it clearly just isn't working for everybody. And it's a very respectable scoreline for Sydney Olympic, given that there's a few A-League clubs who couldn't do that against a club like Sydney FC. So yeah, great game, and we'll be following the FFA Cup in more detail as it continues to heat up.
I guess the big standout from that game was Luke Bratton going down with an ACL injury and he's out for the rest of the season. So that's huge, I guess, in context of the rest of the A-League season and maybe Sydney's chances. But I don't think Sydney will be in too much trouble. Bratton has seemed to be sort of forced out of the starting 11 anyway, although we know what he can bring. So, yeah, it is a big loss in terms of the context of a full season.
More on Sydney FC later in the pod. The Matildas also had a game this week, going down 3-0 to the USA in Sydney in front of a crowd of 36,000. Great crowd. And another record, I believe, for women's football in Australia, or the Matildas rather. They were missing Polks and Kennedy in the heart of defence. Although, it's the USA, there were hints that there's a little bit of depth needed in the Matildas with the World Cup fast approaching. But that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is some Wiggles chat, Damo.
Yeah, mate, you've asked the right man. That's when you've got a toddler who screams to listen to the Wiggles. I'm not sure who was it. Shannon who asked what the best Wiggles song is, and I don't know. I'm not sure where he wants me to start. Which album should I name my favorite song from? If we're going to talk favorite songs, we got to talk about the Propeller. We're going to talk about Getting Strong. We're going to talk about Who's in the Wiggle House. Boys, you know these tunes, famous tunes. Yeah, okay. Well, how about we move on then?
I know Big Red Car.
Big Red Car is very 90s Wiggles, mate. We got 8 Wiggles now.
Wow, it's a whole new world. Well, let's keep going then, boys. Manchester United look like they might have got a new manager, and as many weeks we've got another breaking Manchester United managerial story, as we did last week on the pod as well. So last week, actually, after the pod, one of our listeners, Josh Ferreira on Facebook, asked us who will be the next bus driver at United. And it's sounding like Manchester United have reached an agreement with Ralph Rangnick as the new manager, albeit on an interim basis. And they finally got that director of football back in March. Ralph Rangnick's managed a lot in the Bundesliga, most recently at RB Leipzig. And he's well known for the way he has his teams gegenpressing. That's what people come to know about him. He's a real sort of thinker of the game. Jesse, is this a good move, and is it a sign that the Manchester United circus might be over?
Yeah, I think it might finally be a good move from United after a never-ending spiral of poor moves. This looks like a good appointment. Klopp said the same, and we've obviously seen in the media in recent days that Klopp and Tuchel and these managers all attribute a lot of what they've learnt to him, Hasenhüttl as well. So, I mean, if these guys are pupils of the way this, this guy's done his work over the years and his philosophy, you have to expect that he's going to bring a wealth of experience. He'll steady the ship. And then once he's steady the ship, it's going to be a matter of can he push the squad to actually fulfill some of the potential that's in there. One interesting point that Klopp made was he's very methodical and it's all about training. And Klopp made this sort of point that there's not going to be any time for training in December. So it's all about game time, and the games come thick and fast. So he's probably going to have to work overtime to try and find time during the week with these players and actually get them to learn his methods.
I think the most interesting part for me is a lot of these managers, like you talk about, have attributed a lot of their success and a lot of their tactics to their tutelage under him. And this seems like a good direction for Manchester United in appointing him as an interim manager, with the idea to have him as a sort of a football consultant, consultant for the manager ongoing. And clearly the issue is that whoever they want to be the manager of the football club is not available right now. They can't get them in right now. And they've got future planning, which for Manchester United has been a huge issue over the last 2, 3, 4 years. You could even say all the way back to when Ferguson left, that this sort of future planning has really not been in the right framework. So I think if I was a Manchester United fan, I'd be pretty excited about this, regardless of the results that he can get as the interim manager. I think he'd be more useful in his role when a new manager is appointed.
Yeah, it's been pretty widely praised as a pretty good move from United, and one, like you say, Damo, that seems to have a bit of planning behind it, which is a nice change for the club. And listener Sal Talks Soccer on Twitter asked our thoughts about it, so I thought I'd raise that with you boys, because Sal's a huge supporter of Ralph Rangnick's and feels like the Premier League should be worried about his appointment at United. So we'll see how that goes for the rest of the season. Look forward to seeing Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes gegenpressing very soon. But coming up next, let's talk a bit of Australian football, boys. Let's get into round 2 of the Isuzu Ute A-League Men. Boys, we'll kick off with Sydney FC and MacArthur. MacArthur got up 1-0 to an early goal from LA Rose, who was Johnny on the spot, and hits the point to his name celebration on the back.
Remember the name.
It was really De Vere that made that goal, but the history won't remember that, but the streets won't forget De Vere. Big result for the Mac Bulls. Damo, how did they pull that off?
Yeah, I don't know. Away from home, we spoke about it before. Jubilee's been a bit of a fortress for Sydney FC over the last couple of years in between homes. An enormous result for MacArthur. I think, and I'm sure we'll speak about it a little bit more when we talk about the rest of the A-League games. But from the first 2 rounds, this competition is just so open, and you can't really predict anything, as is the excitement that comes from the A-League. And MacArthur have shown that they're a good side, and Sydney have shown that maybe they're not what they were. So, Colby, what's your thoughts on Sydney?
Yeah, well, I mean, that moves on to the next question. Basically, they dominated every stat in this game except for the one that counted, and haven't scored after the first 2 episodes of this season. I don't know what's going wrong with them. They've obviously got Bratton out with that ACL. Barbarouses weren't there in this game, but they were throwing everything they could at the Mac Bulls, and MacArthur just blunted them. They were happy to give Sydney the ball and just sort of sit back. Jesse, was it the fact that they just had LA Rose at their disposal?
Remember the name. I really love it when a player just points to the back of the shirt, because that's essentially what they're saying. And sometimes it's where they just tap the ball. It's like, you would have thought they've weaved their way down the field like a Maradona, beating 6 players, but it's a tap and remember the name. I think you guys have covered it pretty well. I think that my predictions pre-season was that MacArthur was going to tank and they were going to lose the manager first. So I kind of have to stubbornly hold on to this hope that they are going to perform poorly. But I mean, you can't fault any team that goes and beats Sydney away. And I'm pretty impressed, to put it mildly. I think it showed that De Vere is starting to gel on that team. Which, I was wondering how quickly he'd adapt, and he looks like he's adapting pretty fast. So, yeah, I might be proven wrong quite quickly, but that's a really big win. And I think one thing that we've talked about a little bit before, but can sometimes get glossed over, is that wins, especially away from home at this stage of the season, are gold, because that fixture would be probably 10 times harder mid-season or late in the season. So if you can go there now and get the win, it's just, gold.
Well, Jesse, the cream rises to the top, as they say, with De Villa's quality, and we've talked about LA Rose and all of his quality. Meanwhile, at Sydney FC, you've got Cam Sober. Who would you rather, boys? Who are you picking in the schoolyard if you've got LA Rose on the one side and Cam Sober on the other?
Man, I'm looking straight for haircuts, and if I'm looking at haircuts, LA Rose is first on my team sheet.
He gives me big budget Erling Haaland vibes. It's like, Mum, can we have Erling Haaland? No, Erling Haaland at home.
Haaland from Wish.
Yeah. Yes. Corica would have fired a rocket up Sydney after that. He was absolutely blowing up after the game, and I'm sure that won't be good enough, and he expects them to be just banging in goals. But as it stands, they're second bottom on the ladder. Brisbane Roar couldn't hold up their end of the bargain and beat the Victory today to put Sydney bottom. So as it is, Sydney are currently in 11th to start the season, but very early days yet.
Sorry, Cole, just before you move on from that game, I was just going to ask you, what did you guys think of Kurto's performance? Because he looked pretty shaky, didn't he? I sort of, for some reason, even though I was so upskilled in the A-League preview, I hadn't noticed that Kurto was in the Sydney team until I sort of tuned in today. And he did actually look a little bit out of place and a little bit, all at sea a few times, at least in the clips that I caught. So did you guys think he performed well, or do you think that he was a little bit underdone?
I think he was a late inclusion.
Yeah, and I think there's been a few questions over Kurto and sort of his commitment to the game and partly the reason why Western United looked to bring Jamie Young in and let Kurto go. And he obviously they brought MacArthur brought him in right towards the end when the end of the preseason. So yeah, there's probably a lot of gelling to do there and a lot of sort of understanding of what's going on there. But you would think as a goalkeeper you can at least stop shots. But he seemingly looks uncomfortable there. So I don't know, maybe there's something to keep an eye on, because Kurto doesn't look like the same Kurto that we saw in season 1 at Woo. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, he might have looked uncomfortable, but he did keep a clean sheet. So as it is, it was a great result for MacArthur. But let's move on, boys. Adelaide 2, Melbourne City 2. Melbourne City 2-0 up in this one, away from home. Looked to be controlling things and then just cough it up. Damo, how did City give up a 2-0 lead?
Look, if I'm a City fan, I'm probably pretty worried about this. They went 2-0 up against Brisbane and kind of shut the bed and let them back into the game. Almost finished 2-2 if it wasn't for a disallowed goal. They went 2-0 up against Adelaide and did exactly the same thing. So yeah, there's part of me that would think that City can't finish out a result, and they can't finish out a game strongly. So it's interesting, and I think another. On the flip side of that, Adelaide have been brilliant so far this season, and particularly in the second half of that game were really, really good and dominated the game. You could say that they probably deserved to win on the balance of the second half alone. So, if I'm a City fan, I'm getting pretty worried about kind of how City are trying to manage their leads, and you would want Patrick Kisnobo to really be addressing that early before it becomes a problem.
It's not every day you go to the Australian Anfield Cooper Stadium, and it was an absolute furnace in the second half, and the crowd got them over the line.
I mean, ironically, you say that, but Adelaide's a hard place to go and get results, and it has been for 15 years in the A-League.
Yep.
People struggle to get points in Adelaide, so you can tell Adelaide United like to get points in Adelaide, and they do more often than not.
They got great football culture there. I don't think it's spoken about enough, but like they've got great fans. They always turn up and they always make noise. They've always got like tifos and things. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's the A-League Anfield.
they did spur them on because it was a 90th minute equaliser from Halloran. That chip over the keeper. We've had a question from Shannon in honour of that chip. Which fast food has the best chips, Jesse?
Oh, jeez.
That's a no-brainer for Jesse, surely.
Well, I mean, once upon a time I would have just said K-Fry straight away. But it's so there's a lot of human error that can be involved with K-Fry. If the person doesn't put enough chicken salt on it, then the chips are bang average. And then you have your Maccas, which you'd have to be basically really, really bad at your job to fuck those up. Shoestrings, Glenn McGrath, line and length, straight down the middle. So if you want a safe answer, I'd say Macca's. But if you want, if K-Fry get it right, I have to say K-Fry's chips.
Put some respect on Red Rooster.
Colby, you're from Queensland. You will probably remember Brumbies. Brumbies definitely the best chips in the game. So that's my shout.
What a throwback. Yeah, so just to close this out, boys, we've talked about the best chips, but just back to Adelaide, Damo, are people underrating them?
Definitely. I think, like I sort of said at the top of this A-League segment, it's been really sort of unpredictable as the A-League is when it's good. There's a lot of good sides, and we've had so long off season, we don't really know kind of how to evaluate teams. But I think Adelaide have been severely underrated. And myself, I did the season preview of them, and in hindsight, I'm already thinking, yeah, I missed out a few big names and a few big kind of key elements to their team. And Kasina Yengi has really stepped up to kind of lead this team from the front. And you've seen in that second half, he put the team on the back of his shoulders and kind of carried them at least through the first 15, 20, 25 minutes of that second half. He's turning into a hell of a player, and Adelaide are going to be a tough side to beat this year, all year. They're very resilient.
You love to see it, don't you?
A few observations as well. I mean, J-Mac looked like he's going for a bit of a Johnny Depp phase, maybe you and McGregor. Naboo decided to turn into prime Quaresma, and O'Halloran, and that's why they call him Fishy, because he loves the chips.
How would you feel, though, if you're the young bloke, what's his name? The guy that came on for City, Jordan Bose, is that his name? The defender that gave the ball away. I think he's only just turned 18, and he gave the ball away in the final minute of the game, which led to the equaliser. But I watched that, and you can sort of pin a bit of blame on him, and I'm sure he'll take a lot of blame. But the way Thomas Glover likes to play, he likes to play a long way off his line. He likes to have the ball at his feet and try and get involved. And he's got this confidence that City can kind of keep the ball and keep control of the game. And clearly in that second half, he nearly got caught out a couple of times being a long way off his line, and right at the death he did. So I think that's more of a lesson to Thomas Glover than to the young defender that gave the ball away.
Absolutely. I was going to point out Glover's positioning there. It looked like he was, I mean, he obviously wasn't expecting the ball to be given away, but didn't quite get the reaction either. But it was a brilliant finish by Halloran. So Melbourne City are back at home next week when they take on the Woo on Saturday night. But we will move to the other team in Melbourne, boys. Melbourne Victory 3, Brisbane 0. This was just a dominant home performance from the Victory this afternoon under Popper. You had their fans back to their obnoxious best. Now they're sitting top of the league, and the form's already looking ominous, Damo.
Yeah, it's Melbourne Victory that we expect, right? The crowd's loud, the team plays well, the fans they're obnoxious and arrogant, and it's the Melbourne Victory that the A-League missed last year, and it's really what we expect from them. So it's difficult being a Brisbane fan and watching that game and seeing that result. But as an A-League fan, the league's better off when Melbourne Victory are performing like that on and off the field.
And Jesse, how disappointed are you that the Melbourne Victory circus is over and they're not going to get another wooden spoon this season, and they're just going to go back to just being good?
It was fun while it lasted. Unfortunately, the Popper Vuck is here to stay. And it looks like he's getting the tune out of them, and we haven't used that phrase for a while. So
wait till the end of the season when they come home with a wet sail.
I think friend of the pod Simon put it perfectly when he said, "I can't believe I felt sorry for Victory last year. They're just a bunch of pricks."
Melbourne Pricktory.
I never felt sorry for them. Friend of the show, Damo Simon, also said in that chat, I'd rather lose 3-0 than have Lee Broxham in my team, which I thought was a little bit harsh on Lee Broxham. I'd rather lose 3-0 than have Jason Davidson in my team.
Yeah, especially with a haircut that matches your inner city rivals.
Oh yeah, I thought it was Sydney FC haircut, and then I see him walking out for the Victory. But look, on Victory's form, they absolutely ripped up Brisbane today. Brisbane didn't have an answer for them at all. I read a stat, I think it was Joey Lynch on Twitter, who said it was the first time the Victory have won 2 fixtures since 06-07 when they did the double, which is ominous, as I said. Plus, they did it without Economidis. And Lee Broxham Facts got into our mentions after the game and said, "How are your table predictions going in round 2, boys?"
Round 2. But
round 2.
Well, Colby, I predicted the Victory to do really well, so mine are going great.
Yeah, but Colby, if we flip the script and talk about Brisbane for a minute, where do you kind of see them? Because obviously, going to Melbourne and trying to get results is tough against City and Victory. Always has been for Brisbane, but Can you use that as a barometer for their kind of success for the season moving forward, or how are you seeing Brisbane kind of unfolding from here?
Yeah, it's tough because, like, yeah, as much as you want to read into the early games, I don't know. I guess with players coming in and out, it was Lexicano's first game. Aldred, I think, still out. Had 3 at the back this week. Not a great performance from that back line at all. I don't think anyone can really hold their heads up high. I can't think of anyone who had a really decent game. But I'm not too sure what really the problem is. They set up really defensively, and then Moon didn't change anything. They're getting pumped like clearly in the first half, and it's tough to change something in the first half. But I don't know whether Moon needed to be proactive a bit earlier. It was the 66th minute before a realistic sort of change came on, and I think they changed the shape up a bit there. But do you think that's it, Damo? Is it to do with the manager being proactive, or does he just need to get back into the Gazman sweaters?
I would love a Gazman sweater. It was a bit warm in Melbourne today. Colby, you've relocated since, but we had a bit of sun and a bit of heat today. So I would have loved to have seen Mooney in the t-shirt and the sweater vest, but we'll talk about that another time. As for Brisbane on field, I really don't know where to start. You said that defensively they were poor, whereas last week defensively they were brilliant. Without Aldred, and then it's kind of all over the place. And Moon has been criticised previously for that, exactly what you were talking about, not making changes until very late. He's a very reactive kind of manager and doesn't sort of get on the front foot in terms of changing players. So I think the problem for Brisbane is going to be, and I think I said this last week, is if they start the season with some bad results, albeit having good performances, Warren Moon's back is going to be against the wall, and a lot of people are going to be up in arms for him to lose his job, all because he's not making the right decisions in terms of changing players. So, yeah, I think there's going to be the next probably 3 to 4 weeks are going to be really key for Brisbane. And if they have a few bad games, Warren Moon very well could be gone.
Yeah, they were terrible back to front. In the midfield, they had a lot of problems. There was constant turnovers at the back. Scott Neville had a shocker. Macklin Freak didn't really do too much to help out either. And Hingett and Corey Brown and the wingbacks just looked a bit sluggish as well. We'll have to see how they perform at home when they haven't had to fly the day of a game. They haven't been using that as an excuse, but let's just see how they go against Adelaide next week. Well, Adelaide, who are in brilliant form by the looks of it.
Red hot form, yeah.
Just before we finish up on the victory, though, they were brilliant. Rojas, 2 assists, almost had a goal. This is like vintage Kiwi Messi. Jesse, how happy are you to see a performance like that out of him?
I'm
UNZ captain.
I'm glad you mentioned the Kiwi Messi. I mean, we're coming to World Cup year. So I'm keeping an eye on him. I'm keeping an eye on him, boys. And we'll have Kiwi Messi corner each week and see how he's developing.
Love that.
Yeah. Look, I'd like to see more performances like this out of him because it's been way too long. I just feel like he's been bang average for quite a while, and to step up like that with Economidis out was just what the victory needed. And we had a tweet for Evan Morgan Graham on Twitter as well. He said Popovic looks the absolute goods at victory. Could even get a move off to Europe off the back of this, followed by an immediate move back to the A-League. So we'll watch that as it unfolds as well.
Return ticket.
This Evan never misses at the moment. He's on fire. So
yep, he's in an absolute Twitter purple patch at the moment. So
he's what us athletes call the zone.
Us athletes.
All right, Jesse. Well, speaking of athletes, Wellington got up 2-0 against the Mariners as well. What were your thoughts on Wellington's performance and their 4 points from their opening 2 games?
I'm really pleased with the points, first of all, because I tuned in probably about 5 minutes into the first half, like I just missed the very beginning, and they were under the pump. The Phoenix, they had moments where they looked okay, but there was a period there particularly in the first half, where the Mariners just had them pegged back and they just couldn't get down the pitch. And every time they sort of did get the ball, it was sort of a hopeless clearance, and then the Mariners went back down and bombed forward. And I unfortunately made the comment in the group chat of the fullbacks overlapping fullbacks, and Dave, I was quick to talk about overlapping centre backs. I'm not sure we're in overlapping centre back areas, but the Mariners were looking very good. And then there was this period just before halftime where the Knicks came back and sort of wrestled back a bit of momentum. And then the second half was similar as well. The Knicks played well for a period there, responded very quickly when they went down. But at the end of the day, like, they were under the pump for the final 10, 15 minutes as well. And I was just clinging on, just hoping that we were going to get the 3 points. So both teams, I guess where I'm going with this is that both teams couldn't really string it together a consistent 90 minutes. And it showed in the ebb and flow of the momentum. So, to come away with the 3 points early in the season, you'll take it anyway. You can get them.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a huge result. Like you said, Jesse, it's a bit of good performance, bit of bad performance from both teams. But I didn't catch this game in full, but I watched the mini match late last night, and thing that stood out for me was Joshua Sotirio for the Knicks.
Joshua.
I thought he was brilliant. We talk about him a lot on the pod in terms of not being up to standard, but for me, he was the best on the pitch in the game, and he created the biggest chances and inevitably ended up scoring the winning goal. So, Jesse, what's your thoughts on Sotirio and the kind of the role he's going to have in the Knicks this season? Because the first 2 rounds, he's arguably been their best player.
Well, these players sometimes can be derived not necessarily just from the home fans, but just from opposing fans. But these players are critical for the manager to have flexibility in their formations, because if formation A isn't working, then you bring on those sort of players and they can break a game and change the game, and you can play 2 up top versus, change your formation completely and change the momentum of the game. And that's what he did. And that's what I think is quite impressive about some of these players that we've managed to hold on to out of, obviously we lost a lot of players, but he has hung on to players like Sotirio, who's a very different player to Hooper, for example. And you swap those players for a period of time, and it gets the defenders, it gives them a question to answer. And I was very impressed with them as well. I think you're about to talk about it, Colby, but I just wanted to throw in the penalty debacle, because classic Piscopo getting in Wayne's ear and having an argument about how he should be taking pens, and then Wayne missed. It's a good save, but you don't need that before you take a penalty, do you?
Reno did my boy dirty.
You would imagine that Gary Hooper is on penalties, right? And because he was off, it became a bit of an argument between who was going to take it. That's
surely there's a hierarchy though. Like, that was going to be my question for you boys. Like, what's Ben Wayne doing on penalties? And number 2, what are they doing arguing about it? Surely there's if Hooper's off, then it's Wayne, or then it's Piscopo.
Well, I feel that probably wasn't a conversation. I almost feel like it was almost like Gary Hooper's going to be on, and Gary Hooper will take penalties, and then it when it came up, it was all right. Well, now we need to talk about it. I would imagine it has been addressed, and that will be a plan moving forward. But just quickly, while we're talking about Gary Hooper, he's a brilliant goal scorer and has been for a very long time in the Championship. He's played in the Premier League. He's been all over England, particularly. Probably hasn't performed his best since he's been at the Knicks, but now he's the focal point of the Knicks attack. And I asked the question to you guys the other night: is Gary Hooper being really overlooked for the Golden Boot race this year?
I mean, he's anybody that comes from the Kerala Blasters has my backing.
That's all we need to know.
He's an absolute.
He's going to hit a few sixes.
He's an absolute bazooka up front for the Knicks.
We've just got a question from Thrillhouse FC on Twitter, boys. Who would you rather fight, Reno Piscopo or Ben Wayne?
Well, Reno Piscopo is about 5'3", so I'd probably take him.
And Ben Wayne's a train. I wouldn't back myself against a train.
Yeah. That one was easy.
I don't know. I reckon Reno Piscopo would fight dirty.
Yeah, he'd fight dirty for sure.
Yeah, and I'd be worried about Reno's family, beating me up as well. You got to think about the brothers,
Okay, boys. Western United won, Perth 0. The Woo were off the mark thanks to a 78th minute goal from Dylan Wenzel-Halls. Although it looked as if the cutback from, I think it was Connor Payne, might have rolled over the byline. Boys, did you see this?
Yes.
I saw the highlights. Again, it was a bit of a lackluster game, but the moment that settled the game was very contentious. And where was VAR again? Is my question.
I mean, can we just talk a moment about Payne, because I joined a few lads in the away section for the Raw last year when we went down and watched the Raw versus the Woo. And
yeah, and that's very painful.
Payne ran about 20 or 30 meters down the pitch to go around the keeper and bury the goal, which was the sealer, and do the knee slide in front of the away fans and just give it to us, only for the goal to be overturned by VAR a minute or so later. I just ever since that day, I just thought that guy's an absolute goose. And,
he is a silly goose.
He is a silly goose. He goes into the box and he's like absolutely chahooing after he's rolled the ball. And it's like at that point, you know, that goal could have easily been overturned. You know, he certainly likes to celebrate early. I give it to him. Yeah, I'm not. He's the kind of player. It's hard to like him as an opposing fan. He looks like a real shithouser. Yeah,
I always think he looks like Barney Rubble, but that's neither here nor there. Jesse, not to go back to the Knicks unnecessarily, but I meant to ask you before, like, how are you feeling now that Tim Payne for the Knicks is officially the number one Tim Payne in the country?
That's good. That's good.
No junk mail here.
TP is a commodity, mate. So yeah, no, I'm happy with that.
All right, back to Perth and the Woo though. Sturridge wasn't even on the team sheet for this one, even though he travelled with them. I think there was a tweet or a statement from Tony Sage saying it was Sturridge's decision not to play, saying that he isn't used to the 4-hour flights and felt that he couldn't contribute. Jesse, we'll start with you. Who's going to have how big of an impact is Sturridge going to have on the pitch this season?
Well, I mean, first of all, trying to pick a fixture which Sturridge might appear off the bench or even just start is like playing Minesweeper right now. I'd considered maybe going to one of these games. The Woo was one of them. And I'm pretty glad I didn't, because I would have turned up and watched 90 minutes of no Sturridge, so as a neutral. So I think at the moment, considering his fitness, I mean, Damo, you've made some good points about this. He just isn't ready to play the amount of football that we want him to play. And I think for some reason we all thought he would be. But certainly it's becoming a bit of a reality check. So yeah, hopefully he starts getting drip fed into the minutes soon. And surely if Perth are chasing a game or they need an impact player near the end of the game, at least at the beginning of his time at Perth, he's the perfect player to bring on with about 15 to go.
Yeah, look, I read an interesting, I'm not sure if it was a tweet or part of an article that mentioned an excerpt from Steven Gerrard's book where he spoke about Daniel Sturridge and Sturridge's role in that Liverpool side, which almost won the league under Brendan Rodgers a few years ago. And he said that Daniel Sturridge realized at a point that his body wasn't going to be able to cope with playing 90 minutes every week, and that he completely changed his mindset to understand that he won't play football unless he thinks he's 100% ready to play football. So if you keep that sort of excerpt from Gerrard in mind about this A-League season, clearly Sturridge isn't ready to play football. He doesn't think he's 100%. And that's he came late on in the preseason. He was in quarantine for a couple of weeks and got no training. He's had to do longer travel than he's ever done before. There's a lot of things that go on here. Sturridge will have an impact in the league. He will play. He will score. He will put bums on seats. But at the end of the day, he's not going to be 90 minutes every week, week in, week out, and he's not going to be the star of the show every week. It's just not what Daniel Sturridge is going to be. And whether or not people are going to like that or not, that's just not going to be his role. But he will have a role to play at Perth Glory.
Well, that game snapped a 7-game losing streak in the A-League for the Woo. So they were on that terrible run at the end of the last season. And John Aloisi's got them off the mark. So I take it all back, John. No, just kidding.
You still got Woo finishing bottom of the league, haven't you?
Yeah. No, I've got Woo finishing 7th, and they're currently sitting in 6th after 2 rounds. So I'm close. And just another interesting fact, I saw Andy Howe, Stato, put out a tweet that said the sum of the Woo's shirt numbers was the highest starting 11 in A-League history because, of course, they've got Kilkenny number 88 and Prijovic number 99 in their side. So there you go, boys and listeners. Take that and put it in your back pocket.
It's real ESPN USA kind of stats while you're watching the basketball.
I think it's time to declare and go in for lunch.
Final round that wrapped up just before we started recording this podcast. Western Sydney 2, Newcastle 2. This was a cracking game. I wish we had more time to think about this and sort of get around this so that we could talk about it on the pod. But as it was, Newcastle just came out of this looking the much better of the sides in the first half. But as it was, they went into the sheds 1-1 at half time. Mikkel Tadze got a goal, opened up the scoring with a penalty. He's just 24. Like, you look at the bloke and he looks like a journeyman who's like just this aged, weathered, like Georgian veteran. But no, he's 24. He turned 24 like 2 days ago. But got his first goal. And I think he might be my boy because I really like what he's all about. Ibini got an absolute pile driver, and if you haven't seen this one, listeners, go and look it up because this goal was brilliant. Bit against the run of play, and then Hamed smashes one into the top corner. Also a great goal after Newcastle coughed up possession, and then Bumal got Newcastle back into it. But that was pretty much it. It was a bit of an arm wrestle for the rest of the game, it looked like. But boys, did you see this? Any thoughts? Any advances on that?
I dropped in and out of this game, as did the commentary. But my main thoughts from the game was Valentino Yule's kind of stepped up a lot.
It's Tino Yule now. It's Tino Yule. According
Tino
to
Yule has stepped up a lot. His first season at Western United, which was 2 years ago, he played a very bit part role and didn't do much at all. And he went to Newcastle and he did all right, but the first 2 games this year, very, very much in the same vein as Kusini Yengi. He's kind of stepped up for Newcastle as Yengi has for Adelaide as really kind of the main focal point of their attack. So be interested to see how the longevity that comes from that run. But, I've been really excited to watch him play the first 2 rounds.
I guess the only thing I was going to say is I didn't catch all of it. I just caught parts of it like you, Damo. But I would say that the Wanderers are scoring goals. And I mean, I know we could address Newcastle separately.
Finally.
But the Wanderers, I feel like ever since we sort of started this pod, and that's been for a few years, I feel like the issue with the Wanderers has been scoring goals. And so, I mean, I know the fans will probably be a bit frustrated about defence and conceding, and that's fair enough. But it's such a tightrope trying to get that balance between having a good defensive record and scoring goals. And I guess sometimes, especially early in the season, you can see it a few. But if you can score goals, that's a good place to start. And I mean, hopefully I guess for Wanderers fans, they build from there.
That comes from a rational, disinterested third party, Jesse. But as we know, Wanderers fans aren't rational, disinterested third parties. They are very irrational and very interested in their side. And my read on this from looking at what the Wanderers fans were saying on Twitter during this game, it just seemed like the 2-0 result really papered over the cracks. And they were very upset that Newcastle were basically dominating them on their own patch. And it was best summed up by a tweet from Joshua Stevenson on Twitter. He was saying, look, we rescued it a bit, but Robinson not winning this match is inexcusable. He quit, stripped the Jets for parts, and has had 2 pre-seasons with 100% control of signings, his words, to produce that 30 minutes of football was diabolical. This was a tweet at halftime, but it comes out to the same at the end of the game. So it's just, I thought it was very on point, given that it was against Robinson, who basically did that. He stripped out Newcastle and just went and got whatever he wanted, and he's had 2 seasons. And Papa's already looked like he should have had Newcastle beating Western Sydney in this game. And frankly, it's an embarrassment of riches for the Wanderers when you compare their side on paper with Newcastle. So yeah, I tend to agree with the Wanderers fans here. I think they should have done better.
Yeah, I think the stark difference in the two sides was, and has been for the Wanderers for a few years. There's this air of kind of inevitability that we are a good side. Like we are entitled to be a good side because we are a big club, sort of thing, and the team doesn't feel like they need to work hard. They were severely outworked by Newcastle Jets in this game, which says something to the quality of Wanderers that they were able to get a 2-2 draw when they were severely outworked by Newcastle.
Well, we'll just have to see how they go in their next episode of the Isuzu Ute A-League Men. But coming up next, we'll have
the PSG of the A-League. We've talked about this before.
The fashion label.
Paris Saint-Balmain.
Coming up next, Premier League Match Day 13. Boys, we'll whip through a few Premier League games. There are a couple of games overnight, not too many to get through, but we've got to start with Liverpool 4, Southampton 0. Liverpool with another 4-0 win to keep pace with Chelsea and City at the top of the table. Liverpool just can't stop scoring, and it could have been more, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I have torn Southampton a new one on this pod so many times, and I've used the term circling the drain so many times. And they continue to defy me, and they keep coming back and performing well. And at the start of the season, they go to the Etihad and get a clean sheet. So they keep defying me, and then this kind of Southampton rolls out. And I mean, I know that Liverpool, when they have a lot of possession and when they're in this kind of mood, they can beat a lot of teams. But we've seen other teams put up more of a fight than that. And I just feel like if you're going to play like that for the rest of the Premier League season, they deserve to be relegated, that team. Like, that just was not a team that had enough spine. I mean, Brighton was there a few weeks before, and they go 2-0 down and they fight back to be 2-2. Brighton could end up feasibly in a similar part of the table to Southampton, but very different sides. So I think for me, when I look at that performance, we can talk about a lot of the positives on the Liverpool side, but I just think that, I mean, it was brave that he set up with a 4-3-3, seemingly. It looked like a 4-3-3. But you've got to ask questions of Hasenhüttl. Like, this manager, as much as he can produce some quite interesting football, he does concede some heavy defeats sometimes, and it doesn't actually look like his team is ever going to get back into a game. And that's how it felt watching that game last night. And it never looked like Southampton were going to get back into that game. What did you guys think?
Damo, I'm curious to get your take on it. So is it a case of Southampton were really terrible, or is this just a sign of the huge golfing quality between Liverpool, like the likes of the top three, and the rest?
Yeah, look, it's one of the few games this weekend that I actually watched in full was the Liverpool game. And I'll kind of leave the opinion pieces to the two Liverpool fans, but just a couple of stats about how good Liverpool are at the moment in terms of goal scoring. They've got the top 3 goal scorers in the league. You've got Mane, Jota, and Salah is clear at the top. And then Salah himself has been involved in 25 goals in all competitions. 17 goals, 8 assists, which is more than double of any other player in the Premier League. So Liverpool going forward are just absolutely unstoppable. And I think Southampton have shown in the past that they can have this, like Jesse said, that they can have good games, they can have bad games. When their bad games are bad, they're really bad, and it all falls apart. And Hasenhüttl doesn't have a plan B. And if plan A doesn't work, plan A just turns to plan Z in terms of how shit it is. So, it's a bit of both. Liverpool are brilliant going forward, absolutely brilliant. But you can challenge Liverpool if you're good at scoring goals as well. But Southampton offered nothing. So it was a bit of both. Liverpool were brilliant. Southampton offered really nothing at all. So it was a very entertaining game to watch in terms of attacking football and fun to watch football. And as Liverpool fans, you guys can probably attest to it. It would have been even more fun to watch.
The only person who had more fun than Jesse and I watching this game was Ian Crocker in comms. Loved it.
Is it Ian Dark or Ian Crocker?
No, Ian Crocker. Not Sir Ian Dark, Jesse. No,
Sir Ian Dark.
But Southampton, Damo, you're right. It was a bit of both. I think the likes of Liverpool, City, and Chelsea are clearly much more quality than the likes of Southampton. But they are shocking on the road. They've lost the most games and conceded the most away goals in the league this year. So I think that definitely played into it as well. Not sure what's behind that, but that's they're clearly struggling on the road, Southampton. But Newcastle also struggled on the road to Arsenal, going down 2-0 as Arsenal climbed to 5th after a solid home performance against Newcastle, who are rock bottom. Thanks to goals to Saka and Swagriel Martinelli. Both great goals, but Martinelli with that over-the-shoulder cushion into the top corner was the pick of them. Damo, criticism's gone a bit quiet on Arteta. Where are Arsenal going to finish this season?
Arsenal, I think will still finish probably 7th, 8th, 9th in the league. I think that's their level. They're the youngest team in the league. I'm not sure if you guys have picked that up. They have the 11 in a row youngest starting lineups in the league this season out of every team. So, Arsenal they're building. And it's a bit of a building block. Arteta's not the man for success, but he's the man to sort of steady the ship and bring a bit of youth through. So, yeah, in terms of what his job to do is, he's sort of doing it. He's not there to win trophies for Arsenal. So, Arsenal looking good, but I think that the conversation here is about Newcastle. Newcastle have obviously got their new owners, and there's all this promise, and they've got the war chest to spend, but they're bottom of the league. And wouldn't it just be great if Newcastle got relegated with all this conversation about their owners? So they'd be the richest, not just the richest football club in the world, but the richest second-tier football club in the world.
That would be wild. And Jesse, just on Newcastle, Ed Howe, this was his first defeat as Newcastle manager. They're still rock bottom on 6 points. Is he going to be able to turn it around?
Yeah, I mean, the appointment always looked like a man that could score goals or get goals for the team, but can he keep them out? And I guess there hasn't been a lot of evidence in the first two showings that he can keep the goals out. But I have to say, though, I mean, the Arsenal seem to have a really good they seem to have a really good record at the Emirates, and they tend to keep quite a few clean sheets there as well. And they just sort of frustrated Newcastle. They were a better team with the ball in possession than Newcastle, and it actually was quite interesting. Like, there were more opportunities for Arsenal to score than actually the scoreboard showed. Aubameyang from like point blank range somehow hit the post, and they could have probably had more Arsenal. So I just don't think Newcastle have the quality in that midfield and the squad to hold out teams at the moment. So they're going to have to pick up points against the teams around them. That's pretty much their only hope. And I think they play Norwich next door. Pretty sure they play one of the lower teams next to Burnley. So they will need to pick up points in those games if they want to have a chance.
Norwich and Burnley are just 3 points ahead of Newcastle. So Newcastle definitely aren't out yet. And then you've got another 3 points ahead of them, Leeds on 12 points, Watford and Brentford on 13, and Southampton on 14. So, it's still not done yet at the bottom. But, Eddie Howe's going to have to get his skates on, because Newcastle are still without a win after 13 games, and the only team without a win remaining in the Premier League. Just back to Arsenal before we go, though. I mentioned before that they're in 5th. They're in 5th with a goal difference of -2. And I was having a look at the ladder, and there's only 4 teams with positive goal difference. I just thought that was wild, because normally if you look back at the table for most seasons, there's sort of like, 8 or 9. So the top half of the table normally in positive goal difference. Does this also speak to the golfing quality, or maybe more a case of inconsistency in some of the teams this season?
Yeah, look, I had a pretty good look at this a few days ago when a friend of mine who is a fan of Dortmund and a massive advocate for the Premier League isn't the greatest league in the world. He's of that conversation, and And he made the point that how can you consider yourself the greatest, most competitive league in the world when there's only 4 teams that have got a positive goal difference? And I actually had a look at the other top 4, 5, 6 leagues in the world, and they've got 12, nearly 10, 12, 13 teams with a positive goal difference. So whether that's the fact that there are just a huge golfing class between the top 2, 3, 4 teams in the Premier League and everyone else that just absolutely batter sides, or it's the fact that the Premier League just hasn't scored that many goals this year comparable to other leagues. It's an interesting conversation to have regardless.
And part of that reason for that is Arsenal decided that instead of passing the ball to their strikers, let's let Nuno Tavares and Tomiyasu take all the shots. And you just had these fullbacks taking shots for pretty much 90% of the game and putting them to row Z. So that doesn't help your goal difference either.
Well, Leeds and Brighton, 2 teams with negative goal difference, and a 0-0 result. I mean, I guess you could call that a positive then. But Mopé with a big miss here. Brighton look like they've gone back to being ex-GFC, dominant performance that they couldn't capitalise on. 20 shots to Leeds' 11. But yeah, more dropped points for Leeds after going down 2-1 to Conte's Tottenham last week. Leeds hovering just outside the relegation zone. We'll whip through some of the other results as well, boys. 2 other games played. Crystal Palace 1, Aston Villa 2. Target from a set piece. That's the 10th set piece goal conceded for Crystal Palace. I think they're the most goals conceded from a set piece. Was a stat I read. So yeah, they got to sharpen up on the corners and set pieces. McGinn had another beautiful goal in this game and just hits the Ashley Barnes celebration before Guehi gets bun back late for Crystal Palace. But yeah, no, Crystal Palace suffered their first loss in a little while as well. But yeah, this game looked like exactly what it was, and it was 2 teams pretty squarely mid-table battling it out. And finally, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say in the Brighton game, I mean, it was sort of akin to just a lot of huffing and puffing from Brighton and really trying to bang it in, and Leeds just getting sort of impatient and rolling over, turning the lamp off and going to sleep. But also in that Crystal Palace Villa game as well, I was going to say that, there's a lot of talk about Palace being really, really hot going into that game. And I think a lot of people expected Palace to get the result, but it is intriguing to watch Villa at the moment. And that's why I thought that fixture would be an interesting one, because Stevie G is going to make them hard to beat. But they seem to be, to use the term again, coming home with a wet sail in the 2 games that we've seen. They seem to be scoring the goals late in the game, and they don't mind waiting until the opposition gets frustrated. So I haven't watched too much of the Rangers games over the last couple of years, but I do wonder if that's a bit of a trait of him. It's just, instilling into the players to stay patient until the other team gives them opportunities.
Boys, interestingly enough, Villa and Palace are on the same amount of points so far this season, but Villa have had 7 losses and Palace have only had 3, if I'm correct. Villa have only had 1 draw, whereas Palace have had 7 draws. So Palace are a harder side to beat than Villa, but they just can't manage to win enough games, Palace.
Yep.
Yeah, checks out when you've got Benteke in your team. I know he's been scoring goals recently, but come on. And Norwich and Wolves also played out a 0-0 draw, but this was clearly a better result for Norwich, who took a much-needed point at home to an informed Wolves. So good for Norwich as they look to try and possibly escape relegation this season.
Interesting stat from this game, guys, is that Norwich have taken 7 points from their last league games, 2 wins and a draw, which is more points than they've had in their previous 25 league games combined, where they had 1 win, 3 draws, and 21 losses. So an incredible 3 weeks for Norwich. But on the other hand, Wolves, just like we were saying before, they're hard to beat. They have the best away clean sheet record in the league, only behind Chelsea. So the same amount of away clean sheets as Liverpool, only Chelsea better than them. So interesting at Wolves, they can keep clean sheets, but they can't score goals, which 2 years ago you would have thought was the complete opposite problem.
And a few big games still to play. These will be played out when you're listening to this pod, but we'll go through a couple very quickly. Burnley Tottenham was one that stuck out to me because Tottenham coming off that loss in the Euro Conference League to Mura, who I've never heard of. I don't know who that team is, but I'm guessing they're not.
Well, do you want another
Premier
fun
League
fact?
quality.
Is that
Yeah, go on,
Mura
Tom.
were founded 4 years post Tottenham's last trophy. So Mura were founded in 2012, and Spurs won their last trophy in 2008.
Stat.
And Josh Ferreira on Facebook thinks that there's still a little Spursy fragility in the squad, which I guess if they're losing to the likes of Mura could be the case. But we'll see how they go away at Burnley. Big matches in this round on paper, of course, is Man City hosting West Ham. Tommy's West Ham, which we'll be covering next week on the pod, as well as Chelsea Man United. This should be a good one to see how United respond under their stand-in manager, Carrick. I just don't see what they can do against Chelsea, given the form that Chelsea are in. Mendy, he's got 35 clean sheets after 60 games, which is the same as the Chelsea legend Petr Cech after 60 games as well, which was a stat I saw during the week. So it just shows what kind of form they're in defensively, and then they just eventually will get a goal or two going forward, and it usually comes from their defenders as well.
I'm pretty sure Chelsea have conceded 4 goals in 12 games and only 1 from open play. Which is an incredible stat.
Well, we'll be reviewing those and many more games of the Premier League next week. But before we go, we'll just take a quick break and we'll come back with the Champions League group stage, match day 5 of 6. All right, boys, we'll whip through a few Champions League results. There's been a few key movements in some of the groups and some interesting results this week in the Champions League group stage. But call out if anything else jumps out at you. But otherwise, I'll go through them. First one that stuck out to me was Barcelona drew 0-0. They lost. They dropped points against Benfica, 2 points above them in second. The final match day sees Bayern take on Barcelona and Benfica take on bottom Dinamo Kiev. So Barcelona with it all to do. Barcelona with it all to do against Bayern away. So how do you see that one playing out?
Portuguese football on the rise. That's how I see it playing out.
Benfica could have ended them at the end of that game. Incredible that Barcelona's still in with a sniff, to be honest. George Jesus, did you see him when he just collapsed to his knees after they missed that goal at the end and just crumpled into a heap? But melodramatic, but that's what he's known for.
And in Group B, we've had Atletico Madrid and AC Milan. AC Milan got up 1-0, and Liverpool got up 2-0 over Porto in that group as well.
Oh, that goal, Colby. Can we talk about Thiago goal? I mean.
He's in the goals now.
Yeah, I mean, did it hit the ground? I mean, that's the debate. I just can't see evidence. Play on.
My favorite tweet from this was Zidane watches film of Thiago striking the ball.
It was just
to learn.
Yeah, it's great to see him having a few moments because he's copped it a bit. Not so much inwardly from our fans, but just from everyone in the league, just thinking he just couldn't make the transition. But that guy is an absolute beast technique-wise. And it's like, if he doesn't do much else for the rest of his Liverpool career, he'll always have that goal. So happy for him.
Put that in the bank. So Atleti and AC Milan are both on 4 points, Porto on 5 points. And in the final match day, AC Milan take on Liverpool at home and Porto host Atletico Madrid. So very tight in that group as well. In Group C, we've had Sporting Jesse 3-1 over 3-1 over Dortmund. And this sees Sporting go up to second, 3 points ahead of Dortmund. So the final match day will be Dortmund and Besiktas. That's third against fourth, and Ajax and Sporting first against second. So Sporting look like they should be through. They're safe on goal difference by the looks of it.
They are, yeah. So it was an interesting game to watch, especially the second half, because Sporting needed to win by 2 goals to make it safe. and they were up to 2-0 for a while there, and then they sort of when it got to 3-1, it was getting a bit edge of the seat stuff at the end of the game, but they managed to close it out. But Dortmund they look like a shadow of the side. They should be, and they'll be I haven't heard much from the German newspapers, and your mate Damo surely could show more insight into this than me, but they must be absolutely under the pump back home with that, because we're talking about Haaland being out of the World Cup and out of the Champions League in the space of like 2 weeks, and it's crime. It's a crime that guy hasn't managed to advance further in either of those competitions. So what a shame. But good for Sporty
we'll
fans.
see him on the biggest stage in no time. Maybe not for his national team, but I'm sure he'll move to a bigger club side, and we'll see him doing bits in finals because he's good enough. Just a few other key results in Group H. Chelsea absolutely dominated Juventus. They're both through though on 12 points, but Chelsea will go top on goal difference. In Group F, Young Boys and Atalanta looked like they played out a thrilling 6-goal game. But Young Boys in that game damaged Atalanta's chances of progressing as Manchester United, meanwhile, went up 2-0 over Villarreal on the road to finish top. So Atalanta now a point behind Villarreal, who they take on at home in the final match day. So all to play for there. And in Group A, boys, Manchester City, if we're talking back on our Premier League teams, they got up 2-1 over PSG, goals to Sterling, Jesus after Mbappe opened the scoring for PSG. Both comfortably through, but the thing that stood out to me in this one was Jamie Carragher's tweet to say, really pleased that Manchester City beat PSG. It just goes to show, no matter the superstars you have, because of course PSG have got Mbappe, Messi and Neymar, you can't play with only 7 players defending.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Especially against a team that just loves to hold possession and frustrate the shit out of you. So, fair play.
And we've got Ali in the chat here on the YouTube, just asking us for a word on the AFC Champions League final. I think he might be a fan of Al Hilal, who got up 2-0 over the Pohang Steelers in that one on Wednesday. So well done to Al Hilal getting up in the AFC Champions League final. I wish more people got around it here in Australia. I wish it was more hyped up. Maybe it will be someday once the Australian teams start doing a little bit better. But as it was, Grant just picked up the yellow card and had to, go home a runner-up. So yes, but well done to Al Hilal. But that's going to do it for a pretty big pod this week, boys. And thanks to all of the listeners for joining us once again. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, and thanks. I mentioned this last week, but listeners, if you've just come back to the pod, or if you're joining for the first time, welcome. Subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts as well. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll post links to those in the notes to this podcast, wherever you're listening to it on, because we know a few more people sort of get around the season once the A-League starts. So welcome back. So next week we'll have episode 3 of the Isuzu Ute A-League Men and the Premier League Match Day 14. But until then, enjoy the football.